Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Milo Shapiro. Milo is the founder and CEO of Improv Ventures and the founder and CEO of Public Dynamics. Milo became an improv professional in 2000, doing organizational team building using improv games and motivational speaking. In 2004, he opened his practice to include speaking coaching. Milo's goal is to bring fun, informative, eye opening presentations that will have folks talking and laughing for weeks. You can find Milo on LinkedIn by searching Milo Shapiro or by going to his website, miloshapiro.com. Hello, Milo. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hello, Olivia. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm excited to get this improv on because, like most things in life, you could prepare, but there's that element of improv that definitely happens on the show on a regular basis. And I'd love to have a fellow improv expert on to talk about it. So let's get started. To
Sure.
start the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Milo Shapiro?
Oh, that's a big question. How many areas could that be? I guess if I boil it down, the bottom line of success is feeling like you've created a life for yourself where you like what you're doing, you've got enough to keep you happy in general, and that you feel like you're making a difference in the world for yourself and others. If I was really going to boil it down, it comes down to that. But we could certainly delve into one particular area here and there and say, what does success mean in those?
For you, you know, as we talk about many different areas, and you probably also work with people in many different areas,
Yeah.
what really got you to say public speaking and really leaning into improvisation to boost your confidence, get comfortable speaking in front of others? And where have you really found the joy in improv as you've gone throughout your career?
That's like 6 different questions. I'm gonna pick one of them. Um, so let me take you back to the beginnings of my roots in improv, and then I'll talk about how it related to the business. I moved to San Diego in 1989 and joined a Toastmasters group, 2 different Toastmasters groups, not because I had any reason to be speaking in public. My previous career was in IT, and we had meetings, but there wasn't a whole lot of public speaking going on. I joined Toastmasters for having something to do with my lunch hour, 2 hours, 2 days a week. I was much younger than all of my coworkers, and I needed to do something, so I went to these 2 different Toastmasters groups and ended up enjoying it. Well, somebody in one of the groups told me about a group called Laugh Masters, which was Toastmasters with an emphasis on humor. And that was twice a week on Tuesday nights, twice a month. And they brought in different speakers on humor, different humorists. Well, one month out of the blue, they brought in, instead of a speaker, an improv troupe. Now, this was a long time ago. There wasn't a Whose Line Is It Anyway yet. There wasn't an improv troupe popping up on every campus. It was pretty new to America. And I watched them do their little show. It was probably about 45 minutes, and I was spellbound because what I kept thinking is, I'm supposed to be doing that. I was the one at parties who said, "Let's play charades," or I love the idea of playing with creativity and characters, and I was watching this happen, and there was no scripts, and it was all just coming from us and coming from their minds, and I was mesmerized. So I sheepishly approached one of them afterwards and said, how does one learn to do what you just did? Because I I'm supposed to be doing that. And she said, "We're not really even a troupe. We're an improv class. We were excited someone let us to come to a show." To be honest, in retrospect, they probably weren't very good, but I'd never seen anything like it before, so it was brilliant to me. So she gave me the name of her teacher. I contacted the teacher who in the summertime doesn't do regular classes. She just did drop-ins at all levels. And she said, if you're not afraid to of the fact that people will be way better than you, if you're not afraid, I'm not afraid. And I jumped in and had so much fun that come fall, she said, yeah, I can't put you in my beginner's class. You'd be bored. I'm putting you right into my intermediate class. I took classes with Jackie for a couple of years, and that led to people in that class getting into a troupe. I didn't get into that troupe right off the bat, but about a year later, they had a dropout, and everyone said, "You should have picked Milo. You missed out. Pick Milo." So the guy said, "Okay." I joined that troupe, and that troupe led to me about a year or 2 later with some other people co-founding the San Diego chapter of an international organization of improvisers called San Diego Theater Sports, and I was with them for 14 years. So that was my journey into improv and discovering in doing improv that it wasn't mostly actors. It was mostly lawyers and teachers and accountants and people who wanted something either to give them a creative outlet that they weren't getting with their day, or they wanted the creative edge that improv gave them so they would be better at their jobs as lawyers, as doctors, as business leaders, whatever it was. But my classes were mostly business people, and that's who I ended up forming this troupe with, and had a wonderful time for years. So back to how it tied into anything with speaking and audiences, I left my IT job in 2000 to found Improv Ventures, as you mentioned, and it was solely supposed to be team building using improv games because improv teaches us about listening skills and building on each other's ideas and creative problem solving, all things we want to be doing better in business and in our teams. After a couple of years of doing that, people kept saying to me, "You really should do this with bigger crowds, not just 15 to 20 of us where you give us feedback, but like 200 people." And I looked into the world of speaking and discovered a lot of meeting planners were looking for interactive stuff. So I created a speech where I talked about one of the main lessons I learned from improv, which is that we have to be willing to fail sometime. We can't worry about being perfect all the time and how that gets in our way, and how improv is like that because improv is never perfect. And I get the whole audience playing these improv games in pairs in the audience, which makes it a really fun and lively speech to wake up a conference. Well, so critical finally toward the end, after a couple of years of giving those speeches, I noticed that people were lingering afterwards to talk to me. And they were saying to me, "Would you work with me on my speaking skills? Would you come and work with my staff?" At first, I said, "No, I have all this Toastmasters background, and I've been involved now for a few years in National Speakers Association, but I don't have any job in helping people." And finally, enough people asked me that I said yes to one guy who really, really needed the help, and it really, really helped him. And I thought, "Oh, I'll throw that on my website. What the heck?" And SEO was way easier in 2004 than it is now. And I shot to the top if you typed in San Diego speaking coach. And that's 2004. And now that's probably 80% of my business is the coaching, helping other people to find their power in speaking instead of it being about me. But I still love when I get to be on the stage and doing my programs or when the team building calls come in. They're all fun. Like we were saying, improv is life. And when the phone rings, you never know what it's going to be. So you improvise with each phone call.
And you brought up something I have also personally discovered through my entrepreneurial journey is that sometimes you go into business with an idea of the customers you're going to serve, and then without you fully diving into it and say, okay, I'm going to pivot, someone else finds a superpower that you have and goes, have you thought about doing it this way? And like you said, things shoot up. So for you, when you started leaning into helping people work on talking and speaking in public environments through improv, what was that transition like from the aspect of not necessarily realizing that was going to become your main customer base and then it shifting, and what was that journey like for you?
I knew that my business was going to have to grow from initially just doing team building events with improv. But my mindset was, what other kinds of team building am I going to do? And that was the wrong path. I just didn't know it yet to add other kinds of team building. What the real answer was is you've invested more than 10 years into doing improv and not just doing it, but traveling across California and up into Canada to study with masters. You've got a lot of experience. How else can you apply improv? And I didn't see that yet. So as I listened to what other people had to say, I started to see, oh, it's good that I chose the name Improv Ventures because I can do other things with improv. So it ended up the next launch after the initial keynote, where I get the audience playing games, was somebody says, "Can't you come in and just kind of do it like a show, but with a business focus?" I'm like, "What do you mean a show and a business focus?" And I battered around something with another improviser, and we ended up creating a program called Laugh in the Fast Lane, where we perform 10 improv games that prove 10 business points. So management loves that there's a message, the audience loves that it's a show. We cover both. Would not have seen that coming if someone hadn't said, could you do something like? Uh, and then the more you're out there, the more people know the kind of person you are, the kind of skills you had. Another one that it doesn't come up a lot, but it's come up a few times. I got a meeting planner who called me up and she said, I don't know anyone who can do this, but I thought of all the people in my Rolodex, you might be able to. She said, have you ever led Simon Says to adults? I said, no. She said, could you? I said, when is the event? And she said, 3 months. I said, by then I will know how to do it. Yes. And while I wouldn't do just anything, that sounded like something I could learn to do. And my record now is I got it down to a winner in 14 minutes from 800 people in the audience. So I hope I never have to do that big an audience down to a winner that fast because they were like really insistent that I get to a winner. And I'll never agree to that again because it was cutting it close because 15 minutes was the cutoff. But we did it. So it's sometimes saying this intrigues me. And if it's going to divert you from your work, then you have to be conscious of that. But it didn't cost me anything to say I could try this Simon Says thing. And by sheer luck, the third time I did it, they had a 3 camera shoot happening and I was on mag screens. It makes it look like this is all I ever do. It's the best video I'll ever get because they spent thousands on it. I would never have spent that much. Uh, but listening to what people are saying they're really needing and what they're wanting and saying, is that in my not necessarily comfort zone, but the outer edge of my comfort zone where I could step into that and see how it feels for me. And would it split my message of what I'm trying to do for my main clients? And in this case, it didn't. It was just another thing to add to the website.
And one thing that that really demonstrates that you had mentioned earlier is the fact that even taking phone calls sometimes is having to improv,
Absolutely.
because especially as you're growing your business, you don't necessarily want to say no to things that aren't directly in alignment to the customers you currently serve. It gives you the ability, kind of like what you just said, to challenge yourself, have new experiences, and see what skills you get to also develop, which aligns with improv in a lot of different ways. And Milo, I want to dive into the speaking aspect of improv because no matter what any of us do for a livelihood who might be listening, improv and having a conversation is something we have to do on a regular basis because you don't always know where a conversation might lead personally or professionally. So, what is an activity that can help anyone listening, that can help them with their public speaking and walk? Can you walk us through what that might look like, and where's a good starting point for someone who goes, I really want to practice my speaking and off the cuff kind of conversations?
Sure. One does come to mind. I want to go back to one other point so we don't lose it, and then I will answer that question about the answering the telephone calls. One of the things we have to learn as business people, especially entrepreneurs, is when we should not do something. And early on, one of the things I needed to get into my head is I should only do team buildings that are of a certain size. I shouldn't I don't do well with more than 50 or 60 people. I can't control that well in a team building setting. So if I get a call from someone and they say, "Hey, we have this team building event. We're doing that," and I'm saying, "Great," and then they say there's going to be 150 people there. Me in 2003 would have said, I can't do that. I'm not the right fit. And that would have been better than doing it. But now what I would do is play the improv game of saying, I have another thing that could work well for you because there's no way 150 people are ever really going to bond. It just doesn't happen. It's got to be in smaller settings. But what if they were in pairs doing something? It was more of an audience setting where I could control them. And then I lead them back to the speech, we got to fail to succeed, and tell them, and this is honest, that I've been told many times this is as close to a team building event as a keynote setting it can be. But it works indoors, keeps, and everybody gets up to participate in that tight space. And sometimes I've saved the business by being able to shift their gears, which is improv. So now back to the question you were actually just asking me. I just didn't want to lose that. Um, there is a game called Big that I play with some of my clients. And what's nice about big is you can do it when you're totally alone. You can do it's a great one to do in the car. And the goal is how big can you be on a topic for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, something like that. So the four main emotions we always want to play with, that's a whole nother topic unto itself, but the four core emotions are joy, sadness, anger, and fear. Most of our other emotions are bits and pieces of those put together, like taste buds. And so choose one of them and be that big on it and choose something mundane. If you choose a war, it's easy to be angry about a war. If you choose carrots, it's a challenge to be angry at carrots, but can you do it? So, can you for 30 to 40 seconds go, you know what's wrong with carrots? They come with that peel on it. A banana is gracious, it allows you to peel it, but carrots, they fight, they hold on to that. I mean, it's a very silly thing. It doesn't have to make any sense, but it's a great exercise in can I add drama of some sort to something that's mundane? Which we should be doing is making our topics more interesting. Now, should you do it at a 10 like that? No. But if you can play it at 10, you can decide, I'm going to play this one at a 6. So when I go, doesn't seem right that carrots don't have a peel that just comes off. It should just come off. Now I've taken it down to a 6. Well, if I can pump up that level of energy on a business topic, by playing it at a 10. I can figure out where that's going to be. And there's been a few clients where they were a little on that blander side. And by pushing them to play the big game more often, I can just say when we're in the middle of a speech and they're blending out, I go, big game. And they know from the oh, they need to pick it up a little bit. So if they're saying, I'm trying to think of a business type setting situation, when our delivery drivers aren't coming on time and the people in the stores are waiting for them, our whole business gets backed up. That might have been so when people come and they're late and da, 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 you can pick up the energy on something as mundane as drivers showing up on time.
And one thing that I love about that too, that really transcends into any aspect, and like
Absolutely.
you just did, any topic, is the fact that when you're more monotone, right, softer sometimes, not as loud and sounding as passionate, sometimes words can be missed. Sometimes there can be different body language. And when you're louder and show more passion for a topic, more people perceive that and actually engage as
Although
well.
it's not just about volume, because then you could just be seen as over the top. It's about varying that and knowing when to go soft, when to be able to go, have you ever had dark chocolate where you just feel it melting in your mouth and it's like it tastes like love? So that's where I'm gonna pull it in for that intensity that can come from soft. Or letting you in on a secret. If I do this, I'm letting so playing with that. Volume is one of the 7 variants of vocal variety that I teach. Everybody thinks vocal variety means pitch, and I'm not saying pitch isn't important, especially knowing when to use pitch. It's not just using it, but pitch is only one of the tools, and when you have all 7, you've got all of these tools to pull out at the right moment instead of using the hammer every time, thinking everything's a nail. Because when you have to cut a board, hammers are a really bad tool to be using.
And it's something as well that when you look at how you're interacting with people, that pivot of tone, the body language, drawing people in can really help with just the longevity of the conversation. If you're really passionate about a topic and your voice is reflected where it might seem like you don't care, well, that's going to inherently have people drop off the conversation a lot sooner. And I think that's a really important that you brought up, as well as understanding those inflections and how it might work. So, can you dive in a little bit to what those 7 things people should think about when they are going into a speech or an environment and want to start practicing?
Sure. I mean, this is something I break down over several coaching sessions, but I can give you the high level list of them. If I get them all off the top of my head, I don't usually have to. Uh, volume, pitch, speed, intonation, emotion, break points, Gosh, what's the other one? Holdings. Got all seven.
There
Uh,
you go.
and I'll share holdings because that's an easy one to get across. Sometimes it can be really nice to hold a sound just a little bit longer. And we do this all the time. I mean, I really exaggerated on the really, but to get the point across of a holding. We do this in conversation all the time, but I just did it. I wasn't even thinking about it all the time. And yet it's the first of the 7 to go when we hit the stage because there's something we think maybe is unprofessional about it or too familiar. Audiences want to relate to you. So if it's the kind of thing where it sounds like you're conversational, but you're making your points beautifully, you're telling your stories effectively, why wouldn't you want them to get the same you that they'd be getting over a beer later that night? So holdings can be in some places a really nice way to create that feeling. It's kind of like saying very, very, very without having to say very, very, very. You exaggerate how important something is. So that's one of the ones we play with. One of the easy.
I I love that too because it's something that connectivity can go tenfold in not just the talk you're giving or your work environment now, but really allow people to see a window of you they
Yeah.
might have not seen otherwise. And that example really shows how it can have that importance of what you are on the stage. Someone knows that's how you act, or not necessarily to the T, but how you come across off the stage makes the buy-in tenfold as well.
And you're getting the right clients too. If they like what they're seeing and it's you, you don't have to worry about what happens when you drop it because it's you. And one of the hard things, lessons learned along the way in being your own boss is figuring out when you're not a fit with a client. I had one person who clearly wanted someone more rigid and stiff, someone who sleeps in a tie, that kind of. And I said to him, "I don't think I'm the right fit for you." And he said, "What?" Because it felt like he was getting ready to fire me. And I said, "Yeah, I think you need someone who is more very by the book, very standard. It's not going to be the kind of dynamic, fun programs that I help people create." And when I say fun, it doesn't have to be, that's all folks, and it's not all the way out there. It's, I found that story about how our bus system works really interesting. That kind of, and he stopped there. He goes, "No, the fact that you were willing to refer the business away is making me think maybe I should work with you." I was like, "Okay." But we had to start from a place of him understanding I may not be a fit, and you need to be okay with the fact that this is what I'm going to help you create. In the end, he said, "I'm glad we did continue." He said, "Because you pushed my borders, but I can always rein them in. I wouldn't have pushed them if I had gone with someone who was like me." So that worked out okay.
And you brought up a very important point here as well is understanding when sometimes you have to be transparent and say, if this is what you want, I'm not going to be able to provide that and
Yeah.
have those conversations because it's as a business owner it can be a lot more stressful, a lot more damage control sometimes if you just say yes to everything and then there isn't that alignment of expectations or how you operate, like you said, sleeping in a tie. If you want someone always dressed professionally and then you get on a call and they're in their workout gear, you might be like, wait, what? But
Yeah.
if you rely on the work it might be very different and a very different conversation. So for you, how do you help navigate some of those improv conversations with clients or yourself where you go, okay, now's the time we need to set clear expectations because I don't know if you're going to be the fit for me.
So one of the things you can tell me afterwards if I didn't answer the question. I think I'm getting it. One of the things that I started doing back in '09 was there had been a couple of occasions where I got to like the third and fourth visit with someone, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm not on the right track for what this person either wants or needs because I hadn't done enough investigation up front with them." And so I developed an assessment that I go now 100% of the time go through with someone to find out more. And I say to them, this is the way my business works. The first appointment is not coaching. I'm really clear. I say we need to go through this process, and It's not like going to be like any of the other appointments. And there's two things that we do in the initial appointment. The first thing we do is we do this assessment. And this is not Myers-Briggs or DISC or some other personality test. This is very specifically about public speaking skills. I developed it. This is not something I bought the rights to. And by the end of it, I'm going to have a way better idea of what gets in your way, where you need to grow, what your skills that we want to develop. It's not just about fixing things. It's also about saying, what makes Olivia good? Let's take that to great. What do we want to accentuate about that? Um, I'm going to have a much better idea of how to help you and what the goals are and where we're headed. And you're going to have a much clearer impression of what you're wanting to do, because I've discovered people are actually more vague than I would have expected. People don't know. They just know they need to improve. And I've had a lot of people say, I learned a lot about myself doing the assessment. I wouldn't have thought there were this many questions to ask. So it takes a good 40, 50 minutes to get through the assessment, but we're both clearer. And going back to the question, I think that's how I avoid improvising in the wrong way, by making sure up front I'm getting the right things. The second thing that I do in that initial appointment is I teach a topic called the 4 steps to successful speech structure. It's a fundamental of everything that I build on. And I started doing that in that initial consultation because I found it was so critical that if I didn't do it up front, I'd end up referencing it and having to backpedal. And it was just better to do it there. Plus, if they choose not to stay with me, they leave that first appointment. I'd say 5% of people don't continue with me. But if they don't, they at least have that and they can try and do it on their own. They do it better if they work with me, but they can try to. So that combination of the assessment and the 4 steps is a good grounding. So when we go to that first coaching session next time, which, like I said, about 95% of the people happily do, we're already building on that foundation, and we're more likely to succeed.
Another thing I heard in that too is really spending the time asking the right questions, but
Yeah.
having the right conversation off the bat. And I think that's really important as well, no matter what business you're trying to grow or if you're a manager within your organization, is what are those right questions that I need to be asking so we can realistically see if we align, see if what I might buy aligns, all the different aspects. And I think that's really important for anyone to be doing, even as a consumer, or someone walking in wanting a service, is making sure you're asking the right questions so you leave comfortable as well, and making sure that it pairs well. A lot of people know what they need, and sometimes it can be vague like you said, but if you're scared to ask the question because you might scare the other person away, the only person you're truly hindering is yourself.
Right, they might have been hoping you would ask that, or that they could turn the question around. So in there's some questions you need to be specific on, but also asking those open-ended questions, so they have the opportunity to fill in the gaps with those little tidbits you never would have thought to ask about. I find sometimes, especially when I'm applying to be a speaker at a conference, if they don't ask me some open-ended questions where I can answer, if all I'm doing is filling in the blanks, I can't tell them why this program is a good fit, or I can't share with them why this audience might take to it, but here's something we might want to watch out for. Ask me, my favorite, I know I will want to work with an event planner if the last box is there anything else you want to tell me? Oh, love when I see that, because there's always something else I wanna tell them because they didn't ask that sometimes they don't even have a place where I can put in, like, I have video. You can see this program. There's no room for it. So, try and keep some things open-ended so people can tell you what they're wanting to tell you.
And I love that point of making sure you ask that open-ended question so that people can share what they want to share.
Yeah.
And I want to also dive in a little bit to more of the team building side,
Okay.
because when we work as a group, there can be conflict sometimes, and not knowing how to really work together and get that team bonding. And that is something you started your business off of
Yeah.
and have really done in different ways throughout your tenure of your business. So, learning a skill can be daunting. Getting up in front of a new group, especially peers, when you might not feel comfortable, can be daunting. So when you go into an organization as well that might want, that live action activity, how do you get people who might be standoffish to actually join in and let those walls down?
Yeah. It's funny, I thought you said I'd been doing it for 10 years. I'm like, "No, it's been 24." Oh, tenure, tenure, okay. That's if you saw me laugh in the middle of it, that's what that was. Uh, yeah, that's challenging, and so one of the things that I figured out took me, like, in the first year I figured it out, was there's always gonna be there's some people who just don't wanna be there, and there are other people who wanna be there, but they wanna watch, they don't wanna jump up and do. So, what I generally do is I start with whole group activities where everyone is participating, and there isn't any, "I don't wanna be first." You can't not be first because everyone is participating at once. Games where we do something around a circle quickly, where we're passing something, maybe do things that are more physical so they don't have to worry about vocalizing right away, because that can be more shy, where they only have to chip in a word, or they only have to move a certain place in a circle. Improv games, not scene work. In fact, I almost never do any true scene work in a team building event because it's more than most people can handle day one. So I find that when everybody's participating, no one tends to shy out. And if you don't want to draw attention to yourself, the last thing you're going to do is refuse to participate in a game that everyone is participating in. So they'll give it a try. And then their borders come down a little bit because they end up having fun and laughing together. They discover it wasn't so hard. Then I'll into paired activities. All right, I guess I can do this with just her because I don't have to be up in front of the whole group. So she and I now I get them to play with a different partner. Oh, I have to let go of Lois. I'm kind of, well, oh, I guess it wasn't so bad doing it with Ben after all. And so now they're getting a sampling of doing it not in front of the whole group, but with the whole group a little at a time. I'm running around watching all the pairs, and there are the extroverts. There are the people who can't wait to get up. So I'll ask Bill and Tina, "Hey, would you 2 be willing to get up and try something with me?" And I can tell they're gonna say yes. Once in a while, my instincts are wrong. I have to ask a second pair. So I get one of them up and I teach a game through them, and everyone will see they did it, they survived, they had fun with it, and I'll have a backup pair. I'm like, Jack and Marion, would you 2 come up too? I wanna see." And then I'm like, "We're all gonna try this, so who would like to be next?" And usually by the end, so little by little, everyone is getting used to the idea of getting up. They're seeing that when they make mistakes and when they fail, it's no big deal because everyone laughs together because no one is expected to succeed on the first day they do improv. But they end up succeeding more than they think and appreciating each other and discovering stuff about each other in the process. There was one woman who took me aside before we ever started. And she said, "I need to tell you that A, doing improv is about the biggest nightmare of my life, and B, doing it with this group is the biggest nightmare within the nightmare because these guys are really intimidating to me." She was the admin, and they were all ex-Navy guys, and they were intimidating. I got it. So I said to her, "Here's what we're going to do. You are going to participate in every group activity, and you're going to participate in pairs." She said, "I'm okay with that." I said, "You will always be matched with different people, and it'll just work out as I call in different groups that you're the last pair. And I'll look over at you, and if you go, uh-uh. Like, then we're gonna move on because we ran out of time for that exercise, and we'll go on to the next thing. But if you nod or get up, it's your choice. I'm never forcing you." And she said, "Okay." And she never didn't nod, but she came up to me afterwards and said, "Knowing I always had that control made me feel safe to stay for the day." And she ended up having a great time. It wasn't like she had to endure it. And she played with some of those guys and held her own, which was wonderful. Which is part of why it works for team building so well, because since nobody's done it, it levels the playing field.
Mhm. And not only has no one done it, but to your point, it allows you to step out of your shell a little bit while still having some control and being able to navigate. Because we've all been in situations where, whether we want to admit it in real time or not, there's someone who's intimidating us that's standing around us and that can play a role in our whole demeanor. So it's how can we get comfortable and really have those conversations or interact with those people. And one perspective of that is understanding that we're all on the same playing field right now and we're all sharing the same experience.
Because of that, everything I agree with all of that. Because that sometimes I will find out the rankings of people and I will try and talk to the top levels in advance and remind them that they need to go out there and try and fail and laugh at themselves so that other people will feel safe to do that. Because if they feel like I can't fail in front of the boss in something that has nothing to do with their jobs, the day is going to be tougher. But if he goes out there and he's like, that was hard. Can I try that again? And then celebrate whatever. And then if he's really celebrating any efforts that other people had, they get to let their guard down. Oh, Zach isn't going to be intimidating to be here just because he's the boss and is sometimes intimidating at work. And in
That
one case, I told the manager, don't come because he knew he was intimidating. He intimidated me, and he said I shouldn't come because they will not unwind. I said, normally I would discourage that, but your read of the situation is right. You shouldn't come.
and sometimes it's just reading the situation
Yeah. Yeah.
to pull people in and have those conversations because like you said in that one situation, it would have been a very different experience for people.
Right, right. Another nice thing about it is it really, like I said, it levels the playing field because it's not related to anything they've ever done before. One of the exercises that I love doing is stuff around gibberish, speaking in a fake foreign language. I teach them how to do that first. A lot of people don't even know how, and then they get the little tricks to how to get their mouth to do that. And there was one team building I did with an IT group up in Los Angeles, and there was a woman there named Sun. She's told me that I can use her name. And Chinese, thick accent, very bright, very good at her job, but communicating not her strongest point in the group because it was English second language. We got into the gibberish and she came out of her shell in such a big way because nobody could speak any better than her. In fact, she was a better gibberer than some of the other people because I think English felt a little gibbery to her. And people kept saying, "Is that Sun?" I'm like, "That is Sun when she is not hampered by trying to find the right words to keep up with everybody here who is English native language." So that's how brilliant and creative and emotional and full of life she is. Know that that's what's going on behind her trying to express herself in English. And it totally changed people's view of her and how she could fit into the organization and their patience for her and encouraging of her to share changed dramatically.
And I love that sentiment you just provided because it can be so true. And a lot of people forget who when English is their native language that when you go to a foreign country and they don't speak English as the primary language, roles are going to be reversed. So, what grace do you want? And I love that example with the gibberish because it is really something where it can open your eyes to really how engaging someone could be when they don't feel there are certain boundaries that they have to push through or compete with because of the environment. And I think that's a great way to start wrapping up the show. So, Milo, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. If they're specifically interested in improving their public speaking skills, whether it's a one-time speech that comes up or a program they give on a regular basis where they want to connect better, or even if they never give the same program twice, they just want to be better, the better website to go to is publicdynamics.com, which is over my head if you're looking at video. If you're interested in any of the team building or having me come in lead the audience as part of the motivational speech, then it's just my name, miloshapiro.com. And there is no C in Shapiro. People always want to throw a C in there.
Thank you, Milo, for all of your insight today.
Oh, happy to be here. This was fun. Thanks.
I really enjoyed it, and we have so many different takeaways. I'm going to name a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation. A main lesson from improv is that improv is not perfect and you do not have to be perfect all the time. Really get out of your comfort zone at times and push it, practice, and know that no matter how many times you practice something or rehearse something, it is okay not to be perfect. And I love how improv really teaches you and makes you lean into that as well. As well as the question can be how you can apply your skills in a different way to expand your business. Milo touched upon this earlier as well. Sometimes it's taking the skills you have and how can you build upon those skill sets to build a different aspect of your business, use it to provide a different service than you might be providing now, or just honing those skills when that telephone rings and you need to improv or pivot a little bit, you are able to do that as well. As well as Play the big game to help with your speaking skills. So, again, if you forget, choose something mundane, like Milo mentioned, the carrots and the bananas, and pick an emotion and play it out for 30 seconds. As big as the emotion as you can get, and then practice it in your car, at home, with other people, and make it into a game or by yourself. And this was a great episode with our top notch guest, Milo Shapiro. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.